The ballroom blazed with 1,000 candles, their flames reflected in crystal chandeliers that hung like frozen waterfalls from the vaulted ceiling. Leora kept her back pressed against the cold marble pillar, willing herself to become invisible among the shadows. Every unmated Omega in the Kingdom of Thornvale was required by royal decree to attend the mating ball. Refusal meant imprisonment, and so she had come, wearing the only gown she possessed, her dead mother's dress, mended so many times the original fabric was barely recognizable beneath the patchwork of salvaged cloth. "Look what crawled in from the gutters." The voice cut through the music like a blade. Leora didn't need to turn to know who spoke. Lord Draven's cruel laugh echoed across the marble floor, drawing the attention of nearby nobles. "Someone fetch a broom," he continued, his voice carrying deliberately. "We seem to have vermin at the royal ball." Leora's fingers curled into the worn fabric of her skirt, but she kept her gaze fixed on the floor. "Don't react. Don't give them the satisfaction. Perhaps she's lost." A woman in silk and diamonds tittered. "The servant quarters are in the east wing." "Dear." Laughter rippled through the gathered aristocracy, a wave of vicious amusement that made Leora's cheeks burn. She should have found somewhere to hide, some dark corner where she could wait out the evening unseen. But the guards had herded all the unmated Omegas into the main ballroom, ensuring they were displayed like cattle at market. "No, no, Lady Orvina." Lord Draven stepped closer, and Leora could smell the wine on his breath, the suffocating cologne that couldn't quite mask something rotten underneath. "She's here for the mating ball. This little gutter rat actually believes one of us might choose her." More laughter. Louder now. Leora felt the weight of 100 stares pressing down on her, each one sharp with contempt. "Tell me, girl." Draven's hand shot out, gripping her chin and forcing her face upward. His rings bit into her skin. "What could you possibly offer an alpha? You own nothing. You are nothing." Leora met his gaze despite every instinct screaming at her to look away. His eyes were pale gray, cold as winter stone, and filled with a cruelty that went far deeper than mere mockery. "I offer nothing, my lord," she said quietly. "I am here because the law commands it, nothing more." "The law," Draven spat the word. "The law was not written for creatures like you. It was written for proper Omegas, those with breeding and beauty." His grip tightened painfully. "You insult this gathering with your presence." "I pretend nothing." Leora's voice remained steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. "I merely obey." Something dark flickered in Draven's eyes. His other hand rose, and Leora braced herself for the blow. "Perhaps I should teach you proper respect," he murmured, soft enough that only she could hear. "Perhaps later tonight, after the ball, I'll show you exactly what gutter Omegas are good for." The threat hung between them. Leora felt ice spread through her veins. Then the music stopped. The sudden silence was so complete that Leora could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. Draven's hand froze mid-motion, his head snapping toward the grand staircase at the far end of the ballroom. The Alpha King had arrived. Leora had never seen him before, few common folk had. King Tavian of Thornvale was more legend than man, a ruler who had taken the throne at 17 after his entire family was slaughtered in the Blood Moon Massacre. That was 10 years ago. In all that time, he had never chosen a mate, had never shown interest in any Omega presented to him. Some whispered he was incapable of love. Others claimed his heart had been carved out alongside his family's bodies. Looking at him now, Leora could believe both rumors. He descended the staircase with the fluid grace of a predator, each movement precise and controlled. He was tall, impossibly so, with shoulders broad enough to block out the candlelight behind him. His hair was black as a raven's wing, swept back from a face that seemed carved from shadow and moonlight-sharp cheekbones. A jaw that could have been cut from granite, lips pressed into a firm line that suggested he had forgotten how to smile. But it was his eyes that stole Leora's breath. They were gold. Not amber, not honey, pure molten gold that seemed to glow with an inner fire. Those eyes swept across the ballroom with cold assessment, and every noble present bowed their head in submission. Every noble except Draven, whose grip on Leora's chin had not loosened. The Alpha King's gaze stopped. On her, Leora felt the weight of those wolf-bright eyes like a physical force, pinning her in place. For a heartbeat, everything else ceased to exist, the crowd, the music that had tentatively resumed, even Draven's cruel fingers on her face. There was only the king, staring at her with an intensity that made her wolf spirit howl in recognition. Impossible, she thought. He's not looking at me. He can't be. But he was. And now he was moving. The crowd parted before him like water before a ship's prow, nobles scrambling to clear his path. His stride never faltered, never slowed. Those burning eyes never left her face. Draven finally released her chin. stepping back with obvious reluctance. "Your Majesty," he began, his voice smooth with practiced deference. "I was just explaining to this unfortunate creature that she—" Silence. The single word cracked through the air like thunder. Draven's mouth snapped shut, his face draining of color. The Alpha King stopped directly in front of Leora. This close, she could see the faint scars that traced along his jawline, could smell the wilderness that clung to him, pine and snow, and something ancient that made her blood sing. He studied her face with an expression she couldn't read. Confusion? Recognition? His nostrils flared slightly, and she saw his pupils dilate. "Your name," he said. His voice was deep, rough, as if he rarely used it. "Leora, Your Majesty." The words came out barely above a whisper. "Leora," he repeated it slowly, tasting the syllables. Something shifted in his expression, something that looked almost like pain. Then, without warning, he reached up and removed the crown veil from his shoulders. Gasps erupted throughout the ballroom. The crown veil was sacred. A cloth of midnight blue silk shot through with threads of silver that had been passed down through generations of Thornvale kings. It was never removed in public. It was never, ever given to another. But the Alpha King was draping it over Leora's shoulders as if it belonged there. The weight of it settled against her patched dress, impossibly soft and warm. Where it touched her skin, she felt a tingling sensation, like lightning dancing just beneath the surface. "Your Majesty," Draven's voice cracked with shock. "You cannot, she is nothing, an orphan with no lineage, no." The growl that erupted from the Alpha King's chest was barely human. It resonated through the marble floor, through Leora's very bones, and every Omega in the room dropped to their knees in instinctive submission. "She is mine." 3 words. 3 impossible words that changed everything. Leora stood frozen beneath the weight of the crown veil. The weight of 1,000 stares. The weight of a fate she had never asked for. And when she looked up into the Alpha King's amber gaze, she saw something that terrified her more than Draven's threats, more than the crowd's hatred, more than her own uncertain future. She saw hunger. The moments that followed blurred together in a haze of chaos and whispered outrage. Leora was aware of hands guiding her, not roughly, but firmly away from the ballroom. She was aware of Draven's pale, furious face watching her departure. She was aware, most acutely, of the Alpha King walking beside her, close enough that his arm occasionally brushed against hers, sending sparks cascading through her nervous system. "This isn't happening," she told herself. "This cannot be happening." But the crown veil was still draped over her shoulders, its weight undeniable, and the king's intense stare still fixed on her. They entered a corridor she had never seen before, had never been permitted to see. The walls were lined with tapestries depicting wolves running beneath blood-red moons, and the air smelled of ancient power and secrets. "Your Majesty," Leora finally managed, her voice steadier than she felt. "I don't understand. Why would you will address me as Tavian." She blinked. "I what?" "My name." He stopped walking, turning to face her. In the torchlight of the corridor, his features seemed sharper, more wolf than man. "You will use it. I cannot possibly. You are wearing my crown veil." His voice brooked no argument. "You became mine the moment it touched your shoulders. My laws, my protocols, my titles, none of them apply between us now." Leora's heart hammered against her ribs. "But I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for any of this." Something flickered in his gaze. Was that surprise? Amusement? "No," he agreed quietly. "You didn't." The silence stretched between them. Finally, Leora gathered her courage. "Then why?" she demanded. "There were 100 Omegas in that ballroom. Nobles, beauties, wealthy heiresses who would have wept with joy to receive your attention. Why me? Why a gutter rat in a dead woman's dress?" Tavian studied her face with that unsettling intensity. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Because I have waited 10 years for your scent." Dread coiled in Leora's stomach. "My scent?" "Elderflower and moonlight." His eyes had gone distant, as if seeing something far beyond the corridor walls. "I smelled it once before. In a dream I had the night before my family died. A dream of a woman with silver in her soul and starlight in her eyes." His gaze snapped back to her, sharp and present. "I have been searching for that scent ever since. Tonight, the moment you entered the ballroom, I knew." "Knew what?" Leora whispered. "That you are my fated mate." The words hung in the air between them, impossible and inevitable. Leora wanted to argue, to deny, to run, but something deep inside her, something she had spent her entire life suppressing, recognized the truth in his claim. Her wolf knew him. "This is madness," she breathed. "Perhaps." Tavian stepped closer, and Leora found herself rooted to the spot. But madness or not, it changes nothing. You are under my protection now. No one will mock you. No one will threaten you. No one will ever touch you without your consent again. His hand rose toward her face, then stopped, hovering inches from her cheek. May I? The question startled her. This man, this king who could command armies, who could take whatever he wanted, was asking permission to touch her. Leora nodded, not trusting her voice. His fingers brushed her cheek with devastating gentleness. The touch sent fire racing through her veins, and she saw his pupils dilate in response, heard the sharp intake of his breath. What are you? He murmured, more to himself than to her. Before she could answer, a commotion erupted behind them. Your Majesty, a guard came running, his face pale with urgency. Forgive the interruption, but there's been an incident. Lord Draven demands an audience. He claims the claiming was unlawful, that the girl is already promised to him through a debt contract. Leora's stomach dropped. What? No. That's not, I never. Tavian's expression had gone cold as winter stone. What contract? He says her father owed him a gambling debt before his death, that the girl was signed over as collateral. That's a lie. Leora's voice rose with desperation. My father never gambled. He was a scholar. We will settle this. Tavian's hand found hers, his grip warm and steady. Come. They returned to the ballroom to find Draven standing at its center, a triumphant smile on his face and a yellowed document clutched in his hand. Your Majesty, he said smoothly, I present proof of my prior claim. This contract, signed by the girl's father 5 years ago, pledges her service to me upon her 18th birthday. She turned 18 3 months ago. His smile widened. By your own laws, she belongs to me. Leora felt the world tilting beneath her feet. No, that cannot be real. My father would never. Your father was a desperate man, Draven interrupted, his voice dripping with false sympathy. Desperate men do desperate things. Tavian's hand tightened around hers. Show me the contract. Draven approached, holding out the document with obvious satisfaction. Tavian took it, his wolf-bright stare scanning the contents. Leora watched his jaw tighten, watched something dangerous flash across his features. This signature, Tavian said slowly, is witnessed by your own steward. Indeed, all perfectly legal. And the date is 5 years past. As I said, Tavian's lips curved into something that was not quite a smile. Then you will not object to having it verified by the Royal Archives. If this contract is authentic, the records will confirm its registration. For the first time, something flickered in Draven's confident expression. That will take time. Days, perhaps weeks. In the meantime, the girl should be remanded to my custody as the law. The girl, Tavian interrupted, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. Where's my crown veil? She remains under my protection until this matter is resolved. If you attempt to touch her before then, I will consider it an act of treason against the crown. The ballroom had gone deathly silent. Every eye watched the confrontation between king and noble. Draven's smile had frozen on his face. Of course, Your Majesty, he said through gritted teeth. I would never dream of challenging your authority. The law will be followed. Tavian turned to Leora. Come, you will stay in the royal quarters tonight. As he led her away, Leora glanced back to see Draven watching them, his pale eyes burning with hatred, and in that gaze, she saw a promise. This was far from over. The royal quarters were nothing like Leora had imagined. She had expected cold grandeur, intimidating luxury meant to remind visitors of their insignificance. Instead, she found warmth, thick rugs covering stone floors, a fire crackling in an enormous hearth, shelves lined with books that looked actually read rather than merely displayed. You will be safe here, Tavian said, gesturing to a door on the far side of the chamber. Your room adjoins mine. If you need anything. Why do you have so many books? The question slipped out before Leora could stop it, and she immediately felt foolish. Here she was, in the middle of the most bizarre night of her life, and she was asking about his reading habits. But Tavian's expression softened in a way that made her breath catch. My mother loved stories, he said quietly. When she died, I couldn't bear to part with them. Reading her favorites makes me feel... He stopped, as if catching himself revealing too much. Makes you feel what? Leora pressed gently. Less alone. The admission hung in the air between them, raw and vulnerable. For a moment, Leora saw past the Alpha King, past the predator and the legend, to the 17-year-old boy who had lost everyone he loved. I'm sorry, she whispered. About your family. A flicker of pain crossed his features, there and gone in an instant. You are the first person who has said that to me without wanting something in return. Before Leora could respond, a soft knock interrupted them. An elderly woman entered, her silver hair braided with herbs and her weathered face kind. "Your Majesty, my lady," she dipped a curtsy. "I am Oda, the royal healer. I've brought something to help the young miss sleep." Leora eyed the steaming cup with suspicion. "I don't need. You've had quite a shock tonight," Oda interrupted with maternal firmness. "Your body needs rest, even if your mind protests." She pressed the cup into Leora's hands. "Drink. It's only chamomile and honey, nothing more." The warmth seeped into Leora's cold fingers, and she found herself taking a sip despite her reservations. The taste was simple, soothing, and faintly sweet. "Thank you," she murmured. Tavian nodded to the healer, who withdrew with another curtsy. Then he turned back to Leora, his expression troubled. "There is something I must tell you," he said slowly. "About the crown veil. About what it means." Leora's fingers tightened around the cup. "I assumed it was a claiming gesture. It is, but it's more than that." Tavian moved to the window, staring out at the moonlit gardens below. "The crown veil has been passed down through my family for generations. It's not merely cloth, it's imbued with the essence of every alpha who has worn it. When I placed it on your shoulders, I didn't just claim you publicly." He turned to face her, and his expression was grave. "I tied your life force to mine." Leora set down the cup with trembling hands. "What does that mean?" "It means that if I die, you die. If you die." He paused, pain flickering across his features. "The consequences would be equally severe." "And you did this? Without my consent?" Leora's voice rose sharply. "You bound my life to yours without even asking." "I didn't know." The words stopped her mid-accusation. Tavian looked genuinely stricken, his burnished gaze filled with anguish. "The veil hasn't responded to anyone in 3 generations," he continued. "When previous kings claimed their mates, it was merely symbolic. But when I placed it on you," he shook his head, "I felt the bond snap into place. I felt my wolf recognize yours. This hasn't happened since my great-great-grandmother's time." "What does that mean?" Leora whispered. "It means you're not an ordinary Omega." Tavian crossed to her, stopping just close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "There's something inside you, Leora. Something powerful. Something my wolf recognizes as its equal." "No," Leora thought, terror and recognition warring in her chest. "He can't know. No one can know." But even as she denied it, she felt the truth burning beneath her skin, the power she had hidden since childhood, the gift that had killed her mother and would kill her too if anyone discovered it. "You're mistaken," she said, forcing her voice to remain steady. "I'm no one. Nothing. Just an orphan in a dead woman's dress." Tavian studied her face with those piercing eyes, and Leora had the unsettling feeling that he could see straight through her lies. "Perhaps," he said softly, "but I have learned to trust my wolf's instincts, and my wolf says you are far more than you pretend to be." A distant bell tolled midnight, and Tavian stepped back. "Rest now," he said. "Tomorrow, we will investigate Draven's contract, and tomorrow," his jaw tightened, "I will discover why a man with that much hatred in his eyes is so desperate to possess you." He moved toward the door, but Leora's voice stopped him. "Tavian." It was the first time she had used his name. He turned, and she saw surprise flicker across his features. "If the contract is real," she said quietly, "what happens to me?" The silence stretched between them, charged with unspoken fears. "It won't be real," Tavian finally said. "But if it is," his amber stare met hers, and in it she saw something fierce and protective and frightening. "Then I will burn every law in this kingdom to the ground before I let him touch you." The door closed behind him, leaving Leora alone with the crackling fire and the impossible weight of the crown veil still draped across her shoulders. She touched the fabric with trembling fingers, feeling the ancient power humming beneath the silk. "Tied your life force to mine," he had said. She could feel it now, a thread of awareness stretching between them, growing stronger with each passing moment. But that wasn't what frightened her most. What frightened her was how much she wanted to follow that thread, how much she wanted to believe that anyone might finally see her for what she truly was without running in terror. Outside her window, a wolf howled in the distance, and deep inside Leora's chest, something ancient and wild howled back. Sleep came in fragments, each one filled with visions that felt more real than waking. Leora dreamed of running through moonlit forests on 4 legs, her paws silent against the frost-covered earth. She dreamed of burnished eyes watching her from the shadows, of a voice calling her name in a language older than words. She dreamed of fire. When she woke, dawn was bleeding through the window, and her body ached as if she had truly run for miles. The crown veil lay pooled on the pillow beside her, its silver threads catching the early light like captured stars. A knock at the door made her heart lurch. "My lady?" Oda's voice came through the wood. "The king requests your presence in the archives. They've found something." Leora dressed quickly in a gown that had been laid out for her, simple but finely made. Nothing like her patchwork rags. When she emerged, she found Tavian waiting in the outer chamber, his expression dark, with barely contained fury. "The contract," he said without preamble. "It's been registered in the archives." Leora's knees nearly buckled. "That's impossible. My father would never." "The registration is dated 3 days ago." The words hung in the air, their implications slowly sinking in. 3 days ago. Not 5 years past, when the contract was supposedly signed, but 3 days ago. Draven forged it, Leora breathed. He created it specifically for the ball. Yes. Tavian's voice was deadly calm. But proving forgery requires evidence, and Draven has been thorough. The paper is aged correctly. The ink matches records from 5 years past. Even the handwriting. He stopped, his jaw tightening. Even the handwriting, what? "It matches samples of your father's writing from the Scholars Guild." Leora felt the floor tilt beneath her. How? How could he possibly have? Your father's personal effects, his journals, his letters. Tavian's gaze met hers. "Do you know what happened to them after his death?" The realization hit Leora like a physical blow. Draven. "He was my father's patron for a time. He funded his research before." She pressed her hand to her mouth. "He must have kept copies, letters, anything with my father's signature, and used them to forge a perfect imitation." The door burst open before Leora could respond. A guard rushed in, his face ashen. "Your Majesty, Lord Draven has invoked the right of ancestral challenge. He demands the contract be honored immediately, or what?" Tavian's voice dropped to a dangerous growl. The guard swallowed visibly. "Or he will petition the Elder Council to have your claiming declared void. He says the crown veil was placed unlawfully on a bonded Omega." "I am not bonded to him." Leora's voice rang through the chamber. "I have never even spoken to that man before last night." "The contract says otherwise, my lady." The guard couldn't meet her eyes. "And the Elder Council has agreed to hear his petition. Today, within the hour." Tavian moved so quickly, Leora barely saw him cross the room. He gripped the guard's collar, lifting him onto his toes. "Who authorized this?" The Alpha King's voice had gone wolf rough. "Who on the council dares to challenge my claim?" "Lord Mordecai, Your Majesty. He says ancient law supersedes even the king's will." Tavian released him with a snarl that made Leora's wolf spirit cower instinctively. But beneath her fear, she felt something else, a fierce protectiveness rising from a place she didn't recognize. "He's fighting for me," she realized. "Against his own council, his own laws, for someone he barely knows." "Tavian." She touched his arm, and he stilled instantly at the contact. "If we fight this publicly, we play into Draven's hands. He wants chaos. He wants you to look like a tyrant." Those burning eyes turned to her, wild with barely leashed rage. "What would you have me do? Hand you over to him?" "No." Leora's voice was steady despite the terror clawing at her chest. "I would have you let me speak. Speak, before the council. Let me testify. Let me tell them what Draven threatened in the ballroom, what he promised to do to me." She lifted her chin. "Let them see who he truly is." For a long moment, Tavian simply stared at her. Then, slowly, the corner of his mouth curved upward. "You are unlike anyone I have ever met. Leora of no house and no name. Is that a compliment or a concern? I haven't decided yet." Despite everything, the fear, the uncertainty, the impossible situation, Leora felt a laugh bubble up in her chest, and when Tavian's eyes warmed in response, she felt that thread between them pulse with something that might have been hope. But the moment shattered when a scream echoed from somewhere deep within the castle. Then another. Then the unmistakable sound of wolves howling not outside the walls, but within them. Tavian's head snapped toward the door. That came from the servants' quarters. "My lady," Oda burst through the doorway, her face white with terror. "They've found a body. One of the kitchen girls. She's been..." The healer's voice broke. "She's been torn apart. And there's a message, written in her blood." "What message?" Tavian demanded. Oda's eyes found Leora's, filled with horrified sympathy. "It says, 'The gutter rat dies at moonrise. No king can save what already belongs to me.'" The castle descended into chaos. Guards swarmed through every corridor, searching for an intruder that had somehow breached the most heavily warded fortress in Thornvale. Servants huddled in terrified groups, whispering about the murdered girl, about the bloody message, about the Omega who had brought doom upon them all. Leora heard the whispers. She heard them call her cursed, call her a harbinger, call her things far worse than anything Draven had said at the ball. They're right to fear me, she thought, pressing her back against the cold stone of Tavian's chambers. They just don't know why. Because the truth was worse than any rumor. The truth was that Leora knew exactly what had killed that kitchen girl. She had felt it happen, in the early hours of the morning, while she dreamed of running through forests. Something had brushed against her consciousness, something dark and hungry and utterly without mercy. She had felt claws tear through flesh, felt hot blood splash across fur, felt savage satisfaction at the terror in a young woman's eyes. She had felt it because whatever killed that girl shared something with Leora, the same gift, the same curse. You need to tell me what you're hiding. Tavian's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. He stood by the window, his back to her, but she could see the tension in his shoulders, the rigid line of his spine. I don't know what you... Don't. The word was sharp. Something happened last night, something connected to you. I felt it through the bond, a flash of darkness, of violence, and now a girl is dead with your name written in her blood. Leora's throat tightened. You think I killed her? He turned then, and she saw the war raging in his eyes, suspicion battling against something softer, something that looked almost like desperation. I think you know more than you're saying, and I think whatever secret you're keeping might be the key to stopping this before anyone else dies. The silence stretched between them. Tell him, a voice whispered in Leora's mind. Tell him what you are, what you can do. But she had spent her entire life hiding. Her mother had died because she revealed her gift to the wrong person. Her father had spent his final years in poverty because he refused to let anyone experiment on his daughter. The secret had cost Leora everything. And yet, my mother was a seer. The words fell into the silence like stones into still water. Leora watched Tavian's expression shift surprise, then understanding, then something that looked almost like relief. A seer, he repeated slowly. That's why the crown veil responded to you. That's why my wolf recognized you as an equal. It's more than that. Leora forced herself to continue, each word dragged from somewhere deep and painful. My mother could see the future. I can see. She swallowed hard. I can see through the eyes of others. Wolves, mostly. Sometimes humans, if the emotion is strong enough. You can share consciousness with others? Not share, witness. Leora wrapped her arms around herself. I can't control it. It just happens, usually in dreams. And last night you saw through the killer's eyes. She nodded miserably. I felt what they felt. The hunger, the hatred. Her voice dropped to a whisper. They wanted me to see it. They wanted me to know they were coming. Tavian crossed to her in 3 strides, his hands gripping her shoulders with urgent intensity. Who? Who did you see? I don't know. Their mind was fractured. Wrong. Like a wolf but not. Like something that used to be a wolf before it became a shadow wolf. The words sent a chill down Leora's spine. A what? Tavian's face had gone pale beneath his tan. An old curse. I thought it was only legend. His grip on her shoulders tightened. Shadow wolves are created when a wolf's spirit is corrupted by dark magic. They exist between forms neither fully human nor fully beast. And they can only be created by... He stopped abruptly. By what? Leora demanded. By someone with the power to manipulate wolf spirits. Tavian's piercing stare bored into hers. By a seer. The implication hit Leora like a physical blow. You think No. His voice was fierce. But someone with your gifts created that creature. Someone who wanted to frame you for murder. His jaw tightened. Someone who wants the council to believe you're dangerous enough to warrant immediate execution. Draven, Leora breathed. Draven doesn't have magical ability. But he has money, connections. Tavian's expression darkened. And he clearly has access to a corrupted seer willing to do his bidding. A knock at the door made them both tense. Your Majesty. The guard's voice was strained. The Elder Council has reached a decision. They've declared the Omega a threat to the kingdom. Lord Draven has been granted emergency custody pending investigation. No. Tavian's growl shook the walls. I refuse. They've invoked the blood law, Your Majesty. You cannot overrule them without forfeiting your crown. Leora watched the color drain from Tavian's face. She didn't need to ask what the blood law was, his expression told her everything. It was the one power that superseded even the Alpha King. How long? Tavian demanded. They're coming now, Your Majesty. You have minutes at most. Tavian turned to Leora, and in his eyes she saw desperation, fury, and something that looked terrifyingly like goodbye. There's a passage behind the bookshelf, he said rapidly. It leads to the northern forest. The crown veil will protect you from tracking magic. Run until you reach the Thornwood border. My allies there will. I won't run. Leora's voice was steady despite the terror coursing through her. If I run, they'll say I'm guilty. They'll hunt me forever. And you, her voice cracked. You'll lose your crown trying to protect me. I don't care about the crown, but I do. She reached up to touch his face, and she felt him shudder at the contact. You're a good king, Tavian. Your people need you. I won't be the reason they lose you. Leora, let them take me. The words cost her everything, but she forced them out anyway. Find the real killer. Prove my innocence. And then, the door burst open. Guards flooded into the chamber, followed by Lord Draven with triumph blazing in his pale eyes. Seize her, he commanded. Tavian moved to block them, a snarl building in his chest, but Leora grabbed his arm. Don't, she whispered. Please, find another way. Their eyes met for one agonizing moment. Then Tavian stepped aside, and Leora felt something inside her shatter as the guard's hands closed around her arms. The crown veil was torn from her shoulders as they dragged her away, its silver threads catching the light like dying stars. Take comfort. Your Majesty, Draven said smoothly. The creature will be well cared for until her execution. If you harm her, Tavian said, his voice deadly quiet, I will tear out your throat with my bare teeth. Draven's smile never wavered. I wouldn't dream of it. But as the guards forced Leora through the doorway, she caught Draven's eye, and in that pale gaze, she saw the truth. He was going to hurt her, and he was going to enjoy every moment of it. The dungeon beneath Draven's estate was older than the kingdom itself. The stones sweated with moisture that never dried, and the air hung thick with the scent of rust and despair. Leora had lost track of how many hours she'd been chained to the wall, her wrists raw from the iron shackles, her body aching from Draven's questioning. He called it questioning. What he really meant was torture. Tell me, Draven said pleasantly, circling her like a vulture around carrion. How you bewitched the king. What spell did you use? No spell. Leora's voice was hoarse from screaming. The crown veil chose me. I don't know why. The back of his hand cracked across her face, snapping her head to the side. Lies. His voice remained conversational, almost bored. Common filth like you don't get chosen by magical artifacts. You did something. Used some trick your seer mother taught you before she burned. Leora stiffened. How do you know about my mother? Draven's lips curled with sadistic pleasure. I know everything about you, little Omega. I've been watching your family for years. Your mother's gift, your father's research into wolf magic, your pathetic attempts to hide what you are. He leaned closer, his breath hot against her ear. Why do you think I had your father killed? The words didn't register at first. Couldn't register. My father died of illness, Leora whispered. He died because I poisoned him. Draven straightened, adjusting his cuffs with casual indifference. Slowly, over many months, so no one would suspect. He was getting too close to understanding the shadow wolves, you see, and I couldn't have him interfering with my plans. Rage erupted through Leora's veins, white-hot, all-consuming. She lunged against her chains, a scream tearing from her throat. Draven laughed. There she is. There's the fire I've been looking for. He gripped her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze. Your mother had that same fire. Right before the end. Right before she begged me to spare her daughter. You killed her too. It wasn't a question. I arranged for her death, yes. A mob is so easy to manipulate when you whisper the right fears into the right ears. His pale eyes gleamed with satisfaction. But I made sure she knew, before the flames took her, that I would find you eventually, that all her sacrifice would mean nothing. Leora spat in his face. The blow that followed drove the breath from her lungs. Then another. And another. By the time Draven stepped back, Leora could barely see through the blood streaming from her split eyebrow. I had hoped you would be more cooperative, Draven said, wiping her blood from his knuckles with a silk handkerchief. But no matter. There are other ways to extract what I need. He gestured, and a figure emerged from the shadows. Leora's heart stopped. The woman was ancient, her face a ruin of scars and madness. But it was her eyes that made Leora's stomach clench milky white, yet somehow seeing everything. A seer, Leora breathed. A corrupted seer. My pet, Draven confirmed. She was quite powerful once, before I broke her. Now she does whatever I command. He smiled, including creating shadow wolves to frame inconvenient Omegas for murder. The corrupted seer shuffled closer, reaching toward Leora with gnarled fingers. Such power, she rasped. Such beautiful, untapped power. Let me taste it. Not yet. Draven caught the woman's wrist. First, She's going to help us with something more important. What do you want? Leora demanded. The king's death? Of course. Draven's casual tone made the words even more horrifying. Your bond with him, it's a direct line to his consciousness. With your power and my seer's guidance, we can reach into his mind and stop his heart. Never. Leora's voice shook with fury. I would die first. You'll die regardless. Draven shrugged. The only question is whether you die quickly or very, very slowly. He nodded to the corrupted seer. Begin. The old woman's hands pressed against Leora's temples, and agony exploded through her skull. She felt claws tearing through her mind, searching for the thread that connected her to Tavian, trying to use her gift as a weapon against the man she loved. The realization crashed through her with the force of a tidal wave. She loved him, this impossible king who had covered her in his crown veil, who had fought his own counsel for her, who looked at her like she was something precious rather than something cursed. And now they wanted to use that love to kill him. No, Leora growled. Deep inside her, something snapped. Power erupted from her core, not the passive witnessing she had known all her life, but something active, aggressive, ancient. It slammed into the corrupted seer with devastating force, sending the old woman flying across the dungeon to crash against the far wall. The shackles around Leora's wrists shattered. She dropped to the floor, gasping, her body trembling with the force of what she'd unleashed. She hadn't known she could do that, hadn't known she had that kind of power, but someone else did. Leora's head snapped up to find Draven staring at her with an expression that turned her blood to ice. Not fear, not surprise, satisfaction. Finally, he breathed. I knew it was in there somewhere. I just needed to push hard enough to bring it out. What are you talking about? Your true gift, little Omega. Draven stepped over the unconscious seer with casual indifference, not just witnessing through wolf eyes controlling them, commanding them, the same power that created the first Alpha Kings, before it was bred out of the bloodlines. His smile was terrifying. You're not just a seer, you're a wolf caller, the first one, born in 500 years. Leora felt the dungeon floor tilt beneath her. That's not I can't. You just did. Draven gestured to the shattered shackles, the crumpled seer. And now that I know what you truly are, I have much bigger plans for you than simply killing Tavian. He raised his hand, and Leora saw a strange sigil glowing on his palm, dark magic, the kind that left oily stains on the soul. Sleep, he commanded. The darkness took her before she could scream. Leora woke to the smell of burning sage and the sound of chanting. Her body was bound to a stone altar in the center of a clearing she didn't recognize. Ancient trees loomed overhead, their branches blocking out everything except fragments of a blood-red moon, the same moon that had been promised in the bloody message. Moonrise. The deadline had arrived. Hooded figures surrounded her in a circle, their voices rising and falling in a language that predated human memory. And standing at the head of the altar, his pale eyes reflecting the crimson moonlight, was Draven. Ah, you're awake. He smiled down at her with terrible gentleness. Good. I want you conscious for this. For what? Leora's voice came out as a rasp. The binding ritual. Draven gestured to the hooded figures. These are the last practitioners of the old blood magic. They're going to help me harness your wolf caller abilities permanently. That's impossible. You can't steal another's gift? Draven laughed softly. Your mother said the same thing, right before we proved her wrong. He leaned closer. How do you think I've maintained my influence all these years? How do you think I've controlled the shadow wolves, manipulated the council, stayed one step ahead of every enemy? Horror dawned in Leora's chest. You've done this before. Stolen gifts from other seers. Dozens of them. His voice held no shame, only pride. But none of them had your power. None of them were wolf callers. His fingers traced along her jaw, and she recoiled from his touch. With your gift bound to my blood, I'll be able to control every wolf in Thornvale, including the Alpha King. Tavian will stop you. Tavian is already on his way. Draven's smile widened. I made sure of it. The bond between you called to him the moment you woke. He's racing through the forest right now, desperate to save you. He straightened, spreading his arms wide, and when he arrives, he'll walk directly into my trap. My shadow wolves are waiting in the trees, and this time there are too many for even an Alpha King to defeat. Leora's heart clenched with terror. No, please, begin the ritual, Draven commanded. The chanting intensified. Leora felt dark magic pressing against her consciousness, trying to pry open the doors she had kept locked her entire life. Pain lanced through her skull as invisible claws tore at her gift, trying to rip it from her soul. Fight, she told herself. Don't let them take it. But the magic was too strong. and she was too weak, and somewhere in the forest, Tavian was running toward his death. Tavian. She reached for the bond between them, that golden thread she had tried so hard to ignore. It pulsed with his presence, with his fear for her, with his desperate determination to reach her in time. "Don't come," she screamed through the connection. "It's a trap. Please, don't." "I'm coming." His voice resonated through her mind, clear and fierce and utterly certain. "I will always come for you. They'll kill you. Then I'll die trying to save you." A pause, heavy with emotion. "I love you, Leora. I should have said it before. I should have said it the moment the crown veil touched your shoulders and my wolf recognized its mate." Tears streamed down Leora's cheeks. "I love you too. That's why you have to stay away. That's why." A howl shattered the night. Not a shadow wolf's corrupted cry, this was pure, powerful, and achingly familiar. Leora's heart soared even as her terror deepened. Tavian had arrived. The clearing erupted into chaos. The shadow wolves that had been waiting in the trees came boiling out of the darkness, dozens of them, their forms flickering between solid and smoke, their eyes burning with corrupted fire. But they were met by wolves of their own. Real wolves, pure wolves, led by a massive black beast with eyes of molten gold. Tavian had not come alone. He had brought his pack wolves loyal to the true Alpha King, wolves who had resisted Draven's corruption through sheer force of devotion. The shadow wolves fell before them. Where Leora had expected Tavian to be overwhelmed, she watched instead as his loyal pack tore through the corrupted creatures with savage precision. The shadows dissolved into nothing when killed, their stolen magic returning to the void. Draven's face contorted with fury. "Impossible! My shadow wolves should have..." The black wolf that was Tavian tore through the remaining hooded figures like they were made of paper. Blood sprayed across the ancient stones as he fought his way toward the altar, toward Leora, his blazing eyes never leaving her face. "Kill him!" Draven screamed. "Someone kill him!" But his followers were scattering, fleeing before the fury of an Alpha King protecting his mate. Within moments, only Draven remained, backing away from the altar with wild eyes. Tavian shifted mid-stride, his wolf form melting into human flesh as he reached Leora's side. His hands found the chains binding her, and with a grunt of effort, he tore them apart. "You came," she whispered. "I will always come." He pulled her into his arms, and for one perfect moment, nothing else existed. Then Draven laughed. Leora looked up to see him standing at the edge of the clearing, dragging the corrupted seer beside him. The old woman's eyes were still unfocused from Leora's earlier attack, but dark magic crackled around her gnarled fingers nonetheless, forced from her broken mind by Draven's command. "You think you've won?" Draven's voice was manic, unhinged. "You think love conquers all?" He thrust the seer forward, and dark energy exploded from her ruined body. The blast caught Tavian full in the chest. He flew backward, crashing into the altar with a sickening crack. When Leora reached him, she found blood pouring from a wound in his side, a wound that pulsed with silver-black corruption. "No," she breathed. "No, no, no. Shadow poison," Draven called out triumphantly. "It will spread through his blood within minutes, and when it reaches his heart, I'll kill you." Leora's voice was barely recognizable, more wolf than human. "I'll tear you apart. You could try, but then who would save your precious king?" Leora looked down at Tavian's ashen face, at the corruption spreading across his chest, and knew Draven was right. She couldn't fight him and save Tavian. She had to choose. It wasn't a choice at all. "Go," Tavian rasped, gripping her wrist with fading strength. "Kill him. Don't let me." "Shut up." Leora pressed her hands to his wound, reaching for the power that had shattered her chains. "You don't get to die. Not after everything. Not when I finally... The poison is too strong." His eyes were dimming. "You can't heal shadow corruption. No one can." "I'm not no one." Leora closed her eyes and reached for something deeper than her seer gift, deeper than the wolf collar power Draven had awakened. She reached for the bond itself, that golden thread connecting her soul to Tavian's. "You said my life was tied to yours," she thought fiercely. "So take some of mine." She felt the moment the transfer began a rushing sensation, like water pouring from one vessel into another. Her life force flowed into Tavian, pushing back against the shadow corruption, burning it away with the pure light of their bond. Pain exploded through her body. She felt herself weakening, felt darkness creeping at the edges of her vision, but she didn't stop, couldn't stop. Not until Tavian gasped, his eyes flying open, clear gold once more. "Leora!" His hands caught her as she collapsed. "What did you do?" "What?" "Saved you," she whispered. "Like you saved me. You're dying." His voice cracked with anguish. "The transfer took too much. You're..." Worth it. A slow clap echoed through the clearing. How touching. Draven stepped closer. The corrupted seer's body crumpled and smoking behind him used up, discarded. You've traded your life for his. How wonderfully romantic, and how utterly pointless. He raised his hand, dark magic gathering around his fingers. I'll simply kill you both and take what I want from your corpses. The wolf collar gift will survive your death long enough for me to. He never finished the sentence. Leora felt it happen before she saw it, a surge of power through the bond. But not from her this time. From Tavian. From the pack that surrounded them. From every wolf in Thornvale who had ever bent knee to the true Alpha King. Their strength poured into her, filling the void left by her sacrifice. And suddenly she understood what it meant to be a wolf caller. Not to control wolves, to unite them. Leora rose to her feet, power crackling around her like lightning. You wanted my gift, she said, her voice resonating with the combined strength of 100 wolves. Come and take it. Draven's eyes widened with sudden fear. He hurled his dark magic at her, but it shattered against the shield of golden light that surrounded her. Leora raised her hand and called. Every wolf in the clearing answered not as servants, but as family. They moved as one, a tide of fur and fang that crashed over Draven before he could scream. When it was over, nothing remained but silence and blood and the first rays of dawn breaking through the ancient trees. Leora swayed, her borrowed strength fading. But before she could fall, Tavian was there, his arms wrapping around her, his voice murmuring her name like a prayer. You're alive, he breathed. You're alive. You're alive. We both are. She looked up at him, at the wonder and love blazing in his eyes. Is it over? Almost. He cupped her face in his hands, his expression shifting to something fierce and tender. Leora of no house and no name, you have saved my life, my kingdom, and my soul. You have proven yourself worthy of the crown veil 1,000 times over. His voice dropped to a rough whisper. Will you accept my claiming bite? Will you be my mate, my queen, my heart for all the days we have left? Tears spilled down Leora's cheeks. Yes. Tavian's mouth found the curve of her neck, and when his teeth pierced her skin, Leora felt their bond explode into completion, 2 souls becoming one, 2 wolves recognizing their eternal mate. She bit him back without thinking, claiming him as he had claimed her, and the pack around them erupted into howls of celebration. Later hours or days, she couldn't tell. Leora stood on the balcony of the royal chambers, the recovered crown veil draped once more across her shoulders where it belonged. Below, wolves ran through the moonlit gardens in joyous celebration. Tavian's arms wrapped around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. Regrets? He murmured. Leora thought of the mother she had lost, the father who had died protecting her, the years of hiding and fear and loneliness. She thought of the ballroom where nobles had mocked her rags, where a king had covered her with his crown. None, she whispered. Below them, the wolves howled in celebration of their new queen. And Leora, the gutter rat who had become the most powerful wolf caller in 500 years, finally understood what it meant to come home.